I schemed for 15 years, exhausting my heart and soul to place KGU on the throne. On my deathbed, KGU entered Kuan Palace carrying the severed heads of my grandfather and father, forcing me to drink the final bowl of poison sip by sip. He sacrificed the lives of my entire family to honor the spirit of his beloved Vera in heaven. Clad in imperial robes, KGU stepped into Kuan Palace and whispered to my withered form. I was able to ascend the throne entirely thanks to Nova's efforts. Now is the time for me to fulfill my promise. Yet Nova insists on leaving me. My heart feels as if it's being torn apart. With great difficulty, I opened my eyes and looked at the man I had loved for half my life, my breath faint as a thread. Your Majesty, please don't say such things. That year when I was 7, this subject, this concubine and my mother were kidnapped by villains. It was Your Majesty who saved me. From that moment, I vowed to follow you for life. It was I who ordered your kidnapping. Lying in bed, I coughed violently, my eyes fixed intently on KGU, who wore a sinister smile as he whispered softly, "Your mother was also executed on my orders, who told her to learn things she shouldn't have known." Back then, I was just a powerless prince. No maternal clan to support me, no favor from the emperor. All I wanted was a strong backer. I never expected you would go this far for me. The very man who killed your mother, the reason I stand where I am today is all thanks to you. Nova, I had planned to keep this from you forever, letting you live peacefully as my empress. But you, why did you have to kill Vera? KGU caressed my face and said, I told you back then, she could have just been a consort. While the position of the primary consort in the Eastern Palace would still have been yours, why couldn't you tolerate her? The guards presented 2 boxes. When opened, they revealed the severed heads of my grandfather and father. I coughed violently, the blood I coughed up choking back into my lungs, leaving me gasping for air. KGU lifted the medicine and slowly fed it into my mouth. You thought I didn't know, but I've always known. I've been enduring, slowly adding things to your medicine, gradually taking over the people under your command, step by step seizing military power. I've endured until today. Nova G, it's time for you to die. My consciousness gradually blurred, and in my dying moments, I could faintly hear KGU giving orders to his trusted aides. Chop up this bitch's body and feed it to the dogs. When I woke up again, I had already been reborn on the day KGU returned from his northern expedition. The Northern Expedition Army had not yet returned. Last winter, the story of Crown Prince KGU being injured on the battlefield and saved by a peasant girl, sparking a romantic affair, had spread like wildfire throughout the city. The entire Lee residence was eerily silent. The busy servants deliberately avoided my courtyard, afraid of provoking my wrath and being beaten or killed. Every household in the capital knows that Nova G, the only granddaughter of the Grand Commandant's family, is a rare talent among women, unmatched by any young prodigy, yet she is infatuated solely with His Highness the Crown Prince. Even though the Crown Prince has always been indifferent to the Lee family's daughter, she willingly clings to him. Any young lady who gets too close to the Crown Prince faces her retaliation. Now, all the families in the capital are eagerly awaiting the drama. I gazed at my reflection in the bronze mirror and laughed mockingly. Nova G, who recognized 1,000 characters at 3, composed poetry at 5, and mastered the teachings of 100 schools by 7. I schemed against court officials, princes, and even the emperor, ultimately placing KGU on the throne. I thought I stood above the chessboard, controlling the game of the world, only to realize I had been a pawn in KGU's scheme from the very beginning. I mistook KGU, the murderer of my mother, for a benefactor, and in doing so, I caused the deaths of my grandfather and my father. The maid in the courtyard reminded me that it was time to attend the banquet in the palace. I removed the jade hairpin gifted by KGU from my hair and pressed red paper to my lips. KGU, oh KGU, in this lifetime, I will make you pay for your sins with blood. The Northern Expedition Army returned victorious, and Emperor Qian was overjoyed. He hosted a grand banquet in the palace with 100 tables, inviting all the ministers to bring their families. My grandfather and I were seated close to the emperor's right hand, a special arrangement by Emperor Qian to honor the Li family's prestige. Everyone knows the Li family is renowned for their loyalty and valor. Grand Commandant Li is a veteran of 3 dynasties, with disciples spread throughout the imperial court. He has held the position of Grand Commandant for decades, unshaken by anyone. His son, a true tiger of a general's house, commands 300,000 border troops, guarding the frontiers and ensuring peace in the region. Before long, the crown prince, clad in a python robe, led a timid young girl into the grand hall. Tempered by the fires of war, KGU possessed an astonishing presence, exuding both the overwhelming nobility of imperial lineage and the iron-blooded resolve of a soldier, faintly reminiscent of his former self after ascending the throne in a past life. Your son pays respects to the emperor father. The Qian emperor's gaze grew inscrutable the moment KGU appeared, but the expression vanished almost instantly. He then laughed heartily and said, "Ha ha ha, rise, my son. Your great victory in the northern campaign has brought unparalleled glory to our great Qian. My heart is filled with joy. Name your reward." "And there is nothing I shall deny." Prince Jiyu knelt on one knee, cupping his hands respectfully and said, "Father, during the northern campaign, I was struck in the chest by an enemy arrow. Fortunately, a woman named Vera Liu risked her life to save me and nursed me back to health with 3 months of devoted care. Now, Vera Liu's family has perished in the war. Knowing that such a life-saving grace is beyond repayment, I wish to take Vera Liu as my consort in the Eastern Palace. I humbly request your majesty to issue an edict for our marriage." Vera Liu knelt behind him, her eyes moist and timid, like a startled fawn. The mocking gazes of the crowd converged on me, all waiting to see a spectacle. Emperor Qian's expression suddenly darkened with rage as he flung his wine cup to the ground, shouting, "Scoundrel, you are already betrothed to Lady Li, with the wedding set in 2 months. What do you intend to do with this behavior? Where does this leave Lady Li?" The old man raised his head to glance at Emperor Qian above, his face as still as water. I sneered inwardly. Since ancient times, the imperial family has been heartless. Having lived a second life, I see certain things even more clearly. The crown prince's position is now secure, and he has earned military merits. The Qian emperor, wary of the crown prince's growing influence, seeks to weaken the forces behind him. After all, though the current Qian emperor's health fluctuates, it is far from time for him to abdicate. As an emperor, he will cling tightly to power until his death. Among the imperial princes, the crown prince's dominance has already become a threat to his imperial authority. The first to bear the brunt is my Li family. Over the years, the Li family's displayed strength has shown signs of slipping out of control. The Qian emperor intends to balance the scales, but with the constant warfare in the north, my father's military authority cannot be diminished. My grandfather holds a high position and great power but shows little interest in governance, leaving no grounds for impeachment. The Li family has not openly taken sides, but with me as the only heir, especially during the time when KGU competed for succession with the eldest and third princes, there were faint traces of the Li family's involvement. The court officials tacitly assume the Li family supports the crown prince. Coincidentally, KGU presented an opportunity. The crown prince taking a concubine isn't a major affair, but my reputation for jealousy as Nova G is well known. Arranging this marriage through the emperor's decree right before my own wedding is clearly a slap in the face to my Li family. If Emperor Qian truly had the crown prince's best interests at heart, he would have swept this matter under the rug rather than bringing it to the table for discussion, let alone arranging for us womenfolk to attend the banquet together. Naturally, KGU is also aware of this to some extent. He understands Emperor Qian's intentions, but he has no choice but to bring Vera Liu into the open. KGU knows my temper. He can't hide Vera Liu forever. Who knows when I might have her killed, and at the same time, he's even more certain of his hold over me. In my previous life, it indeed went as he had anticipated. I caused a huge scene, only to be forced into immediate compromise by his words. "Since you can't tolerate her, then let's call off the engagement." I even stopped my grandfather from confronting KGU in court. It seemed like he was blinded by a woman, but in reality, it was all calculated step by step, anticipating everyone's reactions. I truly underestimated KGU in my past life. I picked up the wine glass and drank it all in one go, remaining silent. The atmosphere at the banquet turned cold and quiet. Vera Liu knelt in my direction, sobbing as she spoke. "Miss Li, this humble woman has absolutely no intention of competing with you. If you are willing, I would gladly serve you as a maid or servant." only asking that you allow me to stay by the Crown Prince's side. I raised my eyes to glance at Vera Liu. This woman was exceptionally beautiful, delicate and fragile, with a slender willow-like waist. Every frown or smile of hers could easily stir a man's protective instincts. Rumors in the capital said that beyond the Great Wall, the bitter cold and howling north winds were so severe that Vera Liu's family had no firewood to keep warm. In desperation, she stripped naked to use her own body to maintain Cade Gu's body heat. With such a beauty devoted to him so wholeheartedly, no wonder Gu spent so much time in his previous life plotting to avenge her. I smiled faintly. Really, my courtyard is still short of a maid. Why don't you come back with me today? Miss Liu, the Grand Commandant's residence never mistreats servants. You could even become a chambermaid and enter the Eastern Palace together with me. Vera Liu's face instantly turned red, and she stammered, unable to speak, neither agreeing nor refusing. No one attending today's banquet was foolish, but out of respect for the Crown Prince's dignity, they all smiled without saying a word. To truly be just a maid, how could she possibly appear at this banquet? It's just that her true intentions were exposed by me, leaving her with no face to save. Gu frowned, showing no regard for my dignity, and coldly retorted, Nova G, Vera saved my life. How could she be reduced to a mere maid? I will take her as my concubine. The position of Crown Princess remains yours. Do not trouble her. Cade Gu's words were undoubtedly a public slap to my face, all but explicitly calling me jealous and intolerant. Grandfather couldn't bear to see me wronged and was about to confront Gu immediately. I held grandfather's hand and said with a smile, a life-saving grace is greater than heaven, and the Crown Prince is the foundation of the state. Since Vera Liu saved the Crown Prince, she is also a great benefactor of our Dhn. Wouldn't a position as a concubine be an injustice to her? In my opinion, let's give her the position of the principal consort instead, and my engagement with the Crown Prince shall be called off. The entire room erupted in an uproar. I raised my wine cup and drank it all in one go, my gaze inadvertently sweeping past the inconspicuous Prince Ning in the corner. Vera Liu was a woman meticulously arranged by Prince Ning Jiu Hong through various coincidences to be by Cade Gu's side, all for the purpose of using her identity to deliver a fatal blow to Cade Gu at the critical moment. If I hadn't discovered Vera Liu's true identity and immediately disposed of her behind Cade Gu's back, it's hard to say who would have ended up on the throne. Cade Gu was first surprised, then his expression darkened as he said coldly, as long as you don't regret it, father. Since Nova G intends to break off the engagement, I ask your majesty to grant me a marriage. I am willing to take Vera Liu as my crown princess. Emperor Qian hadn't expected me to react so strongly and directly demand the annulment, with the court's power structure already stabilizing. The emperor didn't want to cause trouble. He first angrily rebuked the crown prince for his nonsense, then tried to smooth things over by saying, Nova, don't be angry. This unfilial son is just momentarily confused. The marriage between you two was decided long ago by me and the Grand Commandant. How could it be treated as child's play? We'll discuss this matter later. Grandfather stood up in a rage, but I grabbed his arm, and he sat back down. Gu glanced in my direction, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. I sneered inwardly. Was Gu thinking that things had indeed gone as he predicted? That the talk of breaking off the engagement was just a momentary outburst, and that I would eventually give in? Grandfather remained silent at the banquet, drinking incessantly and ignoring all toasts. Only when he was thoroughly drunk did the attendants help him out of the palace. Long after the carriage had left the imperial grounds, Grandfather suddenly sat up straight, stared at me for a long moment, and then spoke slowly. The Crown Prince is not a suitable match. This was not the first time Grandfather had broached this topic with me, but every previous discussion had ended in a heated argument between us. My mother died early, and my father was stationed at the border year-round, so I rarely saw him. Grandfather showered me with double the affection and couldn't bear to see me wronged. Grandfather was already at an age where he could retire from official duties, in his previous life. After Gu ascended the throne, Grandfather, not wanting me to struggle in the palace, gave me the tiger tally that could command the 200,000 dragon-guarded troops stationed outside the capital, but it was taken by Gu, ultimately leading to Grandfather's tragic fate. Seeing my eyes redden, Grandfather quickly patted my head and said gently, all right, I won't say any more, but tonight, you truly crossed the line. Once the arrow leaves the bow, it cannot be taken back. Now that you've plunged into this battle for the throne, it will be hard to withdraw, and since your heart belongs to him, in the end, it will only be your reputation as a young lady that suffers. I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes. I understood grandfather's meaning. Back then, I used this marriage contract to enter the game and help KGU secure the position of Crown Prince. Thus, this marriage contract was no longer just a marriage contract. It represented the allegiance of the 200,000 dragon-guarded troops and the 300,000 border army. The Crown Prince was certain I would compromise, and the Emperor would never tolerate the nearly secured 500,000 troops slipping from his control again. I didn't plan to tell grandfather about KGU being responsible for my mother's death. Grandfather has always had a fiery temper, and I feared he might act impulsively and ruin my plans. So I simply reassured him to set his mind at ease, as I would handle everything myself. Over the years, grandfather's disciples, connections, and subordinates have gradually been handed over to me. Grandfather trusts my ability to handle matters, so he stopped asking further questions. That evening, I sent someone to deliver a formal invitation to the Gathering Heroes Tavern, requesting a meeting with Prince Ning. The next day, I went to the tavern with my maid Chunhua. The tavern was closed for business that day. The manager led the two of us to a room on the top floor. I signaled for Chunhua to wait outside and entered the room alone. Dressed in white, Prince Ning sat on his chair burning incense and brewing tea, appearing relaxed and carefree, yet in reality, he had even gotten the tea brewing process wrong. This is also why I didn't send the visiting card to Prince Ning's residence but instead to the Gathering Heroes Tavern. In my past life, Prince Ning hid himself extremely well. It took a full 10 years for the Gathering Heroes Tavern to grow from a small tavern into a highly profitable establishment, yet Prince Ning never made a personal appearance. It wasn't until his failed palace coup and subsequent suicide that this place was revealed during interrogations of his subordinates. Miss Lee, you are quite resourceful. Even this humble tavern of mine, meant for gathering wealth, has been uncovered by you. Prince Ning couldn't figure out what exactly I had uncovered and began probing. Without responding, I sat down opposite Prince Ning, poured out the poorly brewed tea he had made, and started anew. Although the Lee family came from military backgrounds, my grandfather had spared no effort in hiring tutors to teach me these skills since childhood. Later, because KGU enjoyed tea, I even dedicated myself to mastering it for a time. A white mist rose from the clear tea. Forming a veil between Prince Ning and me, I lifted the teacup, took a sip, and said calmly, Your Highness Prince Ning, go compete for the throne. Prince Ning's eyes darkened for a moment, but he quickly smiled and said, Miss Lee, this prince has never involved himself in court disputes, let alone entertained thoughts of competing for the throne. Opening a tavern is simply to diversify my income. Though appearing to yield, this was actually Prince Ning's second wave of probing, after all. As a royal prince, as long as he neither rebelled nor contended for the throne, no one could touch him. If I only found out that this restaurant was his, it wouldn't even scratch him. A prince owning a restaurant wouldn't even make a ripple in the court. I took out a list from my sleeve and handed it over. After glancing at it, Prince Ning's face darkened. This was a list of officials secretly controlled by Prince Ning, totaling 40 or 50 names. Their ranks weren't high, but their positions were all quite delicate. After a long silence, Prince Ning finally spoke. The reputation of the female Zhuge is indeed well deserved. You've quietly uncovered so much. But even if this list reaches my father and the crown prince, as long as I'm willing to abandon them, you still can't do anything to me. I smiled faintly, revealing the greatest reliance of Prince Ning. After all, your highness is a royal prince, as long as you don't rebel. His Majesty will naturally protect you. But what if His Majesty learns the true identity of Vera Liu and how she came to be by the crown prince's side? What do you think would happen then? Prince Ning abruptly stood up from his seat, knocking over the table and sending cups and jars crashing to the ground. His narrow eyes fixed on me with an expression of utter shock. I leaned back in my chair, resting my chin lightly on my hand, watching the Prince of Ning with leisurely composure. The bastard child born of His Majesty and the princess should have been completely erased 18 years ago. Who would have thought she would end up in your highness's hands and successfully infiltrate the crown prince's side, once she marries into the crown prince's household and this matter is exposed? The crown prince will have no chance of inheriting the throne. Your highness has indeed made a clever calculation. In my past life, if Vera Liu hadn't been too ambitious, trying to break free from the Prince of Ning's control too hastily and revealing clues that allowed me to eliminate her, the Prince of Ning might have truly succeeded. It just goes to show that man proposes, but God disposes. The Prince of Ning was one move short of victory. The Prince of Ning sat down and rasped, "I have no idea what you're talking about, miss. I don't know Vera Liu, nor am I aware of these matters. Later, I will go to the palace to report to His Majesty the Emperor." I smiled. Though acting shamelessly is despicable, it is indeed effective. Sacrificing a pawn to save the king has always been a wise move. Revealing Vera Liu's identity would certainly ruin Prince Ning's years of scheming, but in turn, Emperor Qian would cover up this scandal by dismissing everything as mere coincidence. I stood up and placed a confidential document on the table. "I hope Your Highness Prince Ning will deliver the wet nurse of the late Grand Princess to me today and follow my instructions thereafter. After all, you wouldn't want His Majesty to discover why he has been sleepless and growing weaker, would you? The Western region's sacred flowers in His Majesty's bedchamber and the North Sea agarwood incense you presented are a perfect match. Yet no one has noticed it to this day." Then I took Chunhua back to the Li residence. While the Prince of Ning remained seated in the tavern for a long time, in the afternoon, the Prince of Ning sent the person over. Smart people know how to adapt to circumstances. Within 2 days, centered around the Gathering Heroes Tavern, the reputation of the Crown Prince's literary and martial virtues, as the enlightened ruler of the era, spread far and wide. Storytellers in teahouses and taverns also composed tales of Vera Liu rescuing the Crown Prince on the battlefield, which were then performed and spread throughout the capital. At the Grand Court Assembly 2 days later, the ministers deliberated on the specific rewards for the generals who had participated in the Northern Campaign. The most vocal were those under Cade Gu's command, who sought to define the Crown Prince's military achievements. The Great Qian dynasty has an ancestral rule: whoever inherits the throne must have military achievements. However, a censor from the maternal clan of Prince Ning stepped forward, accusing the Crown Prince of violating military regulations by bringing concubines to the battlefield. Soon, over a dozen others joined in the impeachment, causing the court situation to become increasingly unpredictable. The Grand Tutor remained silent in the court, and his subordinates also kept their mouths shut. The two factions argued fiercely, after casting a deep glance at Prince Ning. Emperor Qian seized the opportunity to postpone the discussion of the Crown Prince's military merits. The Crown Prince returned from court with a grim expression, hoping to exchange a few words with his grandfather to ease the tension, but didn't even receive a friendly glance. In the subsequent Grand Court assemblies, there were constant disputes over the Crown Prince's military achievements. What should have been indisputable military merits became a castle in the air, entangled between two opposing factions and deliberately guided by Emperor Qian. In contrast, Prince Ning presented a blueprint for a repeating crossbow, along with a finished product made by the Ministry of Works. Not only did it far surpass the range of the crossbows currently equipped by the Great Qian army, but it could also fire 10 bolts in succession. Once mass-produced and equipped, it will significantly enhance the military's strength. Emperor Qian was overjoyed and not only increased Prince Ning's fief by 1,000 households but also put him in charge of overseeing the entire production and deployment of the repeating crossbows. This move by Prince Ning is undoubtedly a clear signal of his intention to compete for the throne. KGU has a spy in the Li residence, a maid named Liuying from my courtyard. I had someone set a trap to make Liuying break the jade hairpin KGU gave me, and she was punished by being sent to the back kitchen. That hairpin was given to me by KGU when I turned 16 and came of age. I've treasured it dearly and worn it every day. Since I didn't go out and Firefly wasn't by my side, KGU went a whole month without any news of me. When he came to visit, I had Chunhua turn him away at the door, claiming I was unwell. Just as I expected, KGU slipped Chunhua a gold ingot to inquire about what I was doing at home. Chunhua glanced around to make sure no one was watching before pulling KGU aside and said, "The young lady cries her eyes out at home every day, even the old master couldn't console her, and she refuses to speak to us servants. She just keeps sending people to report on what His Highness the Crown Prince is doing." A few days ago, when someone reported that a storyteller in the capital was spreading tales about Miss Liu and the prince, she even ordered people to smash the storyteller's stall. "Your Highness knows how stubborn our young lady can be. She's just throwing a tantrum at you. Why don't you go and have a proper talk with her?" KGU left satisfied after hearing the answer he wanted. After Chunhua returned, she handed over the gold ingot, and I rewarded her again, telling her to save it for when she is released in a few years to get married. Feeling more confident, KGU began making high-profile appearances with Vera Liu at various events. While court officials couldn't easily take sides, the female family members of these officials had no such reservations. KGU carried himself as if he were determined to elevate Vera Liu to the status of crown princess, and naturally, these noble women were eager to cater to his preferences. Vera Liu was frequently invited by these ladies to admire flowers and cruise on the lake, often becoming the center of attention among the women, which greatly satisfied her vanity. She met KGU again at the 70th birthday celebration of Minister Liu of the Ministry of Revenue. Nearly all the prominent figures in the capital were in attendance. The women were arranged in the lakeside pavilion at the rear courtyard of the Liu residence. When I arrived, Vera Liu was seated at the center of the pavilion, with two fourth-rank titled ladies holding her hands on either side, surrounded by a circle of noble women, seemingly discussing some interesting topic. However, my arrival cooled the lively atmosphere. The two titled ladies released Vera Liu's hands, stood up to greet me, and after I returned the courtesy, they casually found seats elsewhere, no longer clinging to Vera Liu. With my grandfather still in court, even if the marriage alliance with the crown prince had fallen through, I remained someone they couldn't afford to offend. The chattering crowd dispersed, revealing Vera Liu sitting inside with a rather unpleasant expression. I simply looked at her as Vera Liu reluctantly stood up and curtsied with a slight kneel. "This humble woman greets Miss Li." I nodded and walked into the pavilion. The noble women made way, and one particularly observant woman pulled out a stool, allowing me to sit in the spot Vera Liu had occupied earlier. All the other seats were taken, and Vera Liu couldn't openly snatch someone else's seat. She and Chunhua stood on either side behind me, almost like attendants. I took a sip of floral tea to moisten my throat. "Miss Liu, are you getting used to life in the capital?" Vera Liu wore a gentle and submissive smile on her face, but her words carried a provocative tone. This humble girl was born in a farming family and has never witnessed the splendor of the capital before. Fortunately, His Highness the Crown Prince has been kind enough to take me around these past few days, allowing me to become somewhat familiar with it. These words are clearly aimed at me. KGU has been accompanying her these days. I sneered inwardly, though nothing showed on my face. Then Miss Liu had better get familiar quickly, otherwise, when you marry into the Eastern Palace and become the Crown Princess, getting lost in the capital would be quite the joke. Vera Liu put on a look of feigned panic. "I am but a humble commoner. How dare I compete with Miss Li for the position of Crown Princess?" His Highness was merely angry that day. Once I return and persuade him, I am certain he and Miss Li will reconcile. First, she claims she wouldn't dare, then speaks in the tone of a mistress arranging a concubine for her lord. In these 2 months, she hasn't improved in other areas, but her verbal skills have certainly sharpened. Unlike the victory banquet where she only knew how to hide behind others and play the victim. "Is that so?" I glanced at Vera Liu, "seeing the floral headdress you're wearing. I thought you had already taken up residence in the Eastern Palace." The number of floral trees in the headdress signifies rank, 12 for the Empress, 9 for the Crown Princess. The noble women nearby finally noticed that Vera Liu was wearing the 9-branched floral crown on her head. Oh dear. Miss Liu must not wear that. The 9-branched floral crown is reserved only for the Crown Princess. This is a breach of protocol, a crime punishable by death. Where did Miss Liu obtain this 9-branched floral crown? The craftsmanship is unmistakably from the palace, and the design looks quite familiar. Wait, isn't this the same as the one the Empress prepared for Miss Li? A single word awakens the dreamer. Everyone else noticed the change in Vera Liu's expression. I smiled without speaking. This flowering tree was prepared for me back when the Empress was still alive. During a banquet, it was even specially brought out for everyone to see. Later, it was kept locked away in the Eastern Palace, waiting to be handed over to me when I married the Crown Prince. Not to mention that my engagement with the Crown Prince hasn't been dissolved yet. Even if it were, these dowry chests shouldn't be opened by her. They must be returned to the palace. Touching dowry gifts intended for another family is a major taboo, even among commoners, let alone the strictly regulated royal family. Vera Liu flushed red, stammering and unable to speak. Seeing the situation turn sour, the palace maid accompanying Vera Liu quietly slipped away to call for help. I glanced at Chunhua, who immediately understood and stepped forward to slap Vera Liu across the face. How audacious, a lowly country wench, accustomed to petty theft, dares to steal from our young mistress. The men's banquet was just ahead in the rear courtyard. KGU rushed over immediately upon receiving the report, spotting Gu's approach. Vera Liu deliberately collapsed to the ground, then she scrambled up and knelt before me, kowtowing repeatedly with tears streaming down her face like pear blossoms in the rain. Miss Li, I truly never intended to compete with you for the Crown Princess position, nor did I know this flowering tree belonged to you. I sincerely apologize to you, Miss Li. Please be merciful and spare me this once. Hearing this, Gu's expression suddenly changed. He quickly stepped forward to help Vera Liu up. And when he saw the 5 finger marks on her face, he was almost heartbroken. All the words he had planned to say at the banquet were instantly forgotten. Furious, he turned to me and demanded, Nova G, why did you hit Vera Liu? If you're upset, take it out on me. Why bully a weak woman like her? With such pettiness, how can you ever be a good crown princess, seeing that the person I had been waiting for had finally arrived? I slammed the teacup heavily on the table and stood up to begin my performance. Crown princess, how can a crown prince have 2 crown princesses? How could the phoenix coronet prepared by Her Majesty the Queen for this humble subject end up on her head? Could it be that His Highness expects me, Nova G, to emulate the legendary Huang and Nuying, sharing equal status with Vera Liu? KGU glanced coldly at the phoenix coronet on Vera Liu's head and said sharply, it's merely an accessory. Vera is naive and must have been given the wrong item by some careless servant in the Eastern Palace. Once I return, I will investigate and give you an explanation. I let out a cold laugh. His Highness is certainly protective. This humble subject has never heard of any servant being so unruly as to open a locked chest without permission. KGU wanted to brush this matter off by shifting the blame to the servants. He was well aware that Vera Liu had overstepped her bounds. But now that it had happened, it was no longer just a matter of right or wrong. This was a game of strategy between KGU and me. If he were to back down now, Vera Liu would have absolutely no chance of entering the Eastern Palace. He wanted both Vera Liu in the Eastern Palace and the support my Li family could provide him. But one cannot have both the fish and the bear's paw, yet the current political climate, the Emperor's stance, my repeated compromises in the past, and Chunhua's words had given KGU a way to have both. By forcing me to yield, KGU is a greedy man. To hook a greedy person, you don't need a big bait, just eliminate his concerns. Vera Liu knelt on the ground, clutching KGU's leg, her voice choked with tears, while a fleeting look of provocation flashed in her eyes as she glanced at me. Your Highness, please don't argue with Miss Li. All the fault lies with Vera Liu. It was Vera Liu who offended the lady. And Vera Liu is willing to atone with her life. As she spoke, Vera Liu stood up and threw herself into the lake in the backyard. Without thinking too much, KGU followed suit and jumped into the lake as well. The entire backyard immediately fell into chaos. The maids of the Liu household, who were responsible for attending to the women in the backyard, were at a loss on how to handle the situation and hurried to the front courtyard to report the incident. Before long, news of someone falling into the water in the Liu household's backyard spread far and wide. The male guests in the front courtyard, disregarding decorum, rushed to the backyard, fearing that the person in the water might be one of their own. 70 years of age was considered a ripe old age in the Great Qian dynasty, coupled with the fact that Minister Liu of the Ministry of Revenue had always been diligent and managed the ministry in an orderly manner. The Qian Emperor graced the Liu household with his presence to join in the birthday celebration, along with the Grand Tutor and the recently prominent Prince Ning, who had been making a name for himself in the imperial court. They all hurried to the backyard upon hearing the commotion. The Liu household servants followed the trio, explaining the situation in the backyard as they went. As soon as the three arrived, they saw Kgu carrying Vera Liu out of the water and onto the shore. Kgu took off his clothes to cover Vera Liu, shouting loudly for Xiong Dai. Xiong Dai pushed her way through the crowd, before entering the Eastern Palace. She had studied for a while with the imperial physician in the palace. Xiong Dai helped Vera Liu sit up and pressed several acupoints on her back. Vera Liu suddenly coughed up a large amount of water and gradually regained consciousness. Kgu asked Xiong Dai to take Vera Liu's pulse to see if there was any issue. Xiong Dai complied, but her expression soon became somewhat uneasy. "Your Highness, Miss Vera Liu is fine, it's just, she's pregnant. From the pulse reading, she's already over 2 months along." "What, pregnant?" "She's pregnant before even entering the household. TSK, this is going to be quite a spectacle. The Crown Prince hasn't even brought his official wife home yet. And an outside woman is already pregnant. This is the imperial lineage. His Majesty would never allow the dragon's descendants to be left adrift." This slap has squarely landed on the Grand Commandant's face. The old man's face instantly darkened like water, his fierce tiger eyes glaring fixedly at Kgu and the other, ungrateful son. Emperor Qian violently threw the folding fan in his hand at Kgu's head, the jade handle splitting Kgu's skull open. "Have all the teachings of propriety from your esteemed Confucian master gone to the dogs?" Kgu knelt on the ground, not daring to utter a word. Vera Liu gave Xiangjie a meaningful glance before quickly stepping in front of Kgu. "Your Majesty, all the faults are mine alone and have nothing to do with the Crown Prince. If punishment must be meted out, let it fall upon me." Kgu was so moved that I thought tears were about to well up in his eyes. He hastily pulled Vera Liu behind him. "Father, Vera and I are truly in love. I beg for your blessing." Grandfather's face darkened. "Blessing? What kind of blessing? Having my granddaughter become a concubine, Your Majesty, since the Crown Prince has already given the betrothal gifts left by the late Empress to this girl, and she is now carrying the royal heir. It would be best to annul the engagement between my granddaughter and the Crown Prince." Kgu opened his mouth, glanced at me, and seemed to want to say something but couldn't find the words. The Emperor remained silent, his expression shifting uncertainly. "How can you treat Miss Nova like this?" I naturally knew what the Emperor was weighing in his mind. The Great Qian Empire had a total of 800,000 troops. Excluding the scattered forces, that left 700,000, apart from the 200,000 Imperial Guards directly under the Emperor's command. The remaining 500,000 troops were all under the control of my grandfather and father. Since ascending the throne, the Emperor had always sought to reclaim the military power held by my grandfather and father. However, with constant unrest in the north, my father had been stationed there to suppress the turmoil, leaving the Emperor no opportunity, let alone a way, to take back the military authority. My betrothal was the Emperor's means of reclaiming all military power for the royal family without shedding a drop of blood. Originally, when the Crown Prince brought back Vera Liu, Emperor Qian intended to downplay the matter, hoping to force me into compromise. Even if I refused to yield, there was still room to simply eliminate Vera Liu. But now Vera Liu is pregnant, and with so many officials' wives and daughters present, it's impossible to keep it a secret. Moreover, Vera Liu holds the status of the Crown Prince's savior, a fact already widely known throughout the capital. If Kgu doesn't marry Vera Liu, it would mean the Crown Prince lacks virtue. A morally flawed Crown Prince would be deposed, and grandfather would never allow my marriage to Kgu to proceed. The military power we had within our grasp would slip away just like that. But if I were to marry her, the betrothal gifts prepared by the Empress would end up in Vera Liu's hands. With the engagement already settled, Vera Liu would have to enter the household first. In that case, it would be perfectly reasonable for the grandfather to annul the marriage. And even the Qian Emperor would have no grounds to oppose it. The military power within reach would slip away. Father, Vera saved my life, and Nova has also shown me deep affection and loyalty. Both are people I cannot betray. If Nova is willing, I will marry them both. Nova as the Crown Princess and Vera as the Crown Consort. If Nova is unwilling, Then the engagement between us shall be dissolved. Kgu glanced at me, his eyes conveying a clear message. If I disagreed, I shouldn't regret it later. With so many people present, if the engagement were called off now, there would be no chance of reviving it in the future. I sneered inwardly, but outwardly I lay on the stone table, sobbing quietly. At that moment, Prince Ning stepped forward and retorted, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, how could you bully Miss Nova like this? If Miss Nova were to agree, how could she ever hold her head high in the capital again?" With that, he knelt before Emperor Qian. "Father Emperor, your son has long admired Miss Nova. If the Crown Prince is unwilling to marry her, then your son is willing to do so." Kgu's face changed dramatically. He never expected Prince Ning to intervene at this moment. If Prince Ning were to marry me, his position as Crown Prince would become unstable. In contrast, Emperor Qian's expression relaxed. If the Crown Prince couldn't marry her, Prince Ning doing so would serve the same purpose. After all, the military power would ultimately remain with the imperial family. Moreover, a prince with military power and a crown prince without it. One has influence, the other has the title. No matter how they contend, the final decision rests with Emperor Qian, which indirectly strengthens his imperial authority and aligns with his interests. What does the Grand Commandant think? I quickly stood up and anxiously called out, "Grandfather." A glimmer of hope appeared on Kgu's face. If I refused, Prince Ning's marriage proposal would fall through. Grandfather played along perfectly, scolding angrily, "Silence, I'm not dead yet. This marriage is not for you to decide as you please. Chunhua, escort the young lady back." Then he turned back to speak with Emperor Qian. "Since Prince Ning is so sincere, this old minister naturally wishes to find a good match for my granddaughter. Once I return, I will have someone prepare the necessary items, and we shall set a date to formalize the engagement." Emperor Qian was greatly pleased and issued an oral decree. "In that case, the engagement between the Crown Prince and Nova is hereby annulled. The Crown Prince shall marry Vera Liu as his Crown Princess, and the wedding shall be held on an auspicious date." After Emperor Qian and the elder had left, Kgu stood up, glaring coldly at Prince Ning. "Ninth brother, are you truly determined to oppose me? Everyone in the capital knows Nova's heart belongs to me. Be careful not to lose more than you gain." Prince Ning cupped his hands in a gesture of respect. "Your Highness the Crown Prince speaks too seriously. This humble brother simply cannot bear to see Miss Nova suffer such injustice. Moreover, Miss Nova is intelligent and resourceful, and I have indeed admired her for a long time." That night, Xiangjie quietly entered through the rear courtyard of the Li residence. "Miss, you wouldn't believe it. That Vera Liu at the Liu residence pretended to be meek and unassuming, but the moment the emperor bestowed the marriage, she went back and ordered all the betrothal gifts meant for you to be opened. She put on the wedding dress, headpiece, and accessories perfectly and kept admiring herself in the bronze mirror. A maid in the Eastern Palace called her Miss Vera Liu and was slapped, told that from now on she must be addressed as the Crown Princess. I personally poured a cup of tea for Xiangjie, who was flustered by the unexpected honor and dared not drink it. It must have been hard for you all these years in the Eastern Palace. Your younger brother has been doing well in the military camp and will soon be promoted to Centurion. In a few days, I'll order his transfer to the capital so you siblings can see each other more often." Xiangjie sobbed quietly, repeatedly praising the young lady for her great kindness. "Kgu has planted spies in the Li residence, and naturally, I have my own informants in the Eastern Palace too. Xiangjie is just one of them." After Xiangjie left, Prince Ning emerged from the courtyard. "Miss Nova is truly a master strategist with eyes and ears everywhere. Even the chief steward of the Crown Prince's residence is her person. Today's grand spectacle must also be her handiwork. Right, Xiongdai is reliable, quick-witted, and, under my guidance, has repeatedly offered useful suggestions to Kgu, earning his deep trust. She is an unconventional chief steward of the Eastern Palace. Vera Liu is a woman driven by strong ambition and vanity, and she excels at deception. She is unaware of her own origins and even less so of Prince Ning's manipulation behind the scenes. But that doesn't stop Vera Liu from wanting to break free from this control. I learned about Vera Liu's pregnancy a month ago and had Prince Ning send her a secret letter, informing her of changed circumstances and ordering her to leave the Eastern Palace. But with an heir, Vera Liu gained confidence. Not only did she refuse to evacuate as instructed in the secret letter, but she also secretly disposed of the messenger. After the Liu family sent out the invitations, I began orchestrating this grand scheme. Ever since she became pregnant, she had no choice left. The primogeniture system was deeply ingrained, and even as the crown prince's concubine, she was still just a secondary wife. Vera Liu refused to settle for being a mere concubine. The child was her bargaining chip. She couldn't afford to lose it. But if she dragged things out too long and I compromised first, then this chip would become useless. So making me unable to compromise and forcing the crown prince to marry her became her only option. I deliberately had Xiangjie inform her about the betrothal gifts in the Eastern Palace. Sure enough, Vera Liu immediately thought of a solution and even begged Xiangjie to cooperate with her. I lit a stick of sandalwood incense and placed it in the censer. This humble subject was unaware that Prince Ning had a penchant for climbing walls. What if you were mistaken for a thief and arrested by the authorities? Wouldn't that be a joke? Prince Ning smiled. The officials wouldn't dare arrest me, Your Highness. I'm truly baffled and couldn't wait any longer. What exactly does Miss Nova intend to do? Is she really seeking revenge against the crown prince? I clapped my hands, and Chunhua had a servant brought out under guard. What this humble subject intends to do is none of Your Highness Prince Ning's concern. For now, you may take this person back with you, but there won't be a second time. Rather than wasting effort investigating the Li residence, Your Highness would do better to focus on how to contend with the crown prince. Prince Ning's face stiffened into a forced smile, never expecting that the spy he had just planted in the Li residence would be exposed so quickly. Prince Ning's current predicament lies in the fact that the court officials all believe he has secured the Grand Commandant's support. Combined with his own faction, his influence even subtly surpasses that of the crown prince. He alone knows these are mere appearances. The Qian Emperor does not. Bound by an emperor's art of balance, the Qian Emperor cannot afford to grant Prince Ning more power, while the crown prince will inevitably regard him as a mortal enemy. Only by clinging closely to the Li family could Prince Ning find a glimmer of hope for survival in the whirlpool of this power struggle. In other words, Prince Ning had no choice but to obey obediently. The wedding of Kgu and Vera Liu was scheduled for a month later. Vera Liu's pregnancy couldn't wait, making the 1-month preparation period extremely rushed. In the imperial court, Prince Ning began to contend with Kgu, with the support of his grandfather's subordinates. He forced Kgu into repeated retreats. The court inevitably buzzed with talk of changing the crown prince, but Emperor Qian feigned deafness to maintain balance. During this time, Kgu came to the Li residence multiple times wanting to see me, but each time, my grandfather turned him away. He also sent someone to deliver a letter to me, saying that he had been filled with regret since that day and hoped I would carefully reconsider my relationship with the Prince of Ning. He even brought up the incident from when I was 7 years old again. I threw the letter into the fireplace and had Chunhua tell him that I had always wanted to go out, but my grandfather wouldn't allow it, as he was determined to make this marriage happen. The day before the wedding was Vera Liu's investiture ceremony. The palace sent invitations for various families to attend, and I went with my grandfather. At the palace gate, I ran into Kgu and Vera Liu. Time was tight, and the palace had no time to prepare another set of consort's ceremonial attire and accessories for Vera Liu, so they simply used the set originally prepared for me by the Empress. Vera Liu was dressed in the consort's ceremonial robes today, adorned with a headdress. When she saw me arrive, she didn't speak but merely smiled and gently touched the floral ornaments on her head, as if declaring her status as the crown prince's consort. Her couldn't have been more obvious. I glanced at the two of them and made to follow my grandfather inside. But Kgu blocked my path, standing right in front of me. I let the old man enter first. He gave the crown prince a sidelong glance, snorted coldly, and then went ahead into the palace. Nova, it was my fault the other day for making you suffer grievances, but you mustn't treat your lifelong matter as a joke just because of a momentary anger. With reddened eyes, I glanced at Vera Liu standing behind Kgu, my gaze full of resentment. What else can I do then? Should I go to Your Highness's Eastern Palace as a concubine? Must Your Highness continue to bully Nova like this? Hearing this, KGU thought there might still be a chance to turn things around and quickly said, "You and I have shared a bond since we were 7 years old. It was just a momentary lapse in judgment on my part. But now I've come to my senses. Nova, why not first withdraw from the engagement with Prince Ning? In a few days, I'll ask His Majesty for permission to marry you. You can enter the Eastern Palace first as a Crown Princess consort, and later I'll elevate you to Crown Princess. Vera doesn't understand these matters and can't manage the affairs of the Eastern Palace well. When I ascend the throne in the future, I'll surely make you Empress. How does that sound, Your Highness?" Vera Liu stared at KGU in disbelief. The Crown Prince, who had just days ago defied the Grand Commandant's family to break off his engagement for her sake, was now proposing to replace her as Crown Princess right in front of her. Overwhelmed with sorrow, she began to weep bitterly. But now, KGU couldn't care less about her, his mind solely focused on waiting for my answer. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before he lost his position as the Crown Prince. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, today is the coronation ceremony for the Crown Princess. Isn't it against propriety to be entangled with your younger brother's fiancée here?" Prince Ning walked over from behind and positioned himself between me and KGU. As the saying goes, when enemies meet, their eyes blaze with hatred. "Jiyu Hong, you haven't even formalized the engagement yet, knowing full well that Her Highness and Nova share mutual affection. You still insist on pursuing Nova. Clearly, it's all for the power of the Li family. Do you really think this will help you compete with me for the throne?" Prince Ning wasn't angered and simply smiled. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, this prince never forced you to break off the engagement. Please mind your dignity, Your Highness. Nova, we should go in now. Let's not keep the Grand Commandant waiting." With that, he took my hand and led me into the palace. "Nova, are you really going to help him oppose me? Have you forgotten how I risked my life to save you back then?" I paused in my steps, my expression instantly turning cold, but then I followed Prince Ning inside. From KGU's perspective, it seemed as though I had been swayed by his words but was then forcibly pulled away by Prince Ning. While regret filled my heart, a faint glimmer of hope still lingered. Vera Liu behind him cried even harder. "If Your Highness does not wish Vera Liu to be the Crown Princess, Vera Liu will yield the position to Miss Li." KGU felt irritated and couldn't help but scold. "If you don't want to be the Crown Princess, you can resign to His Majesty later. All you do is cry all day long. Who are you trying to show it to?" Vera Liu's face turned pale instantly. Looking at KGU's gloomy expression, she found him utterly unfamiliar. The passionate vows they had exchanged just days ago now seemed like mere bubbles, vanishing without a trace. The palace gate was bustling with people, and many who overheard the exchange began eyeing Vera Liu with amusement, lingering to see how she would react. Humiliated, Vera Liu wanted to storm off in a huff, but ultimately couldn't bear to part with her position as the Crown Princess. She obediently sealed her lips. When Fragrant Butterfly came to my residence to report in the evening, Chunhua couldn't help but laugh at Vera Liu for quite a while. 3 days after the investiture ceremony, the Crown Prince's grand wedding took place. The wedding ceremony was held in the Eastern Palace, and the grand play I had prepared for KGU finally began. On that day, the Eastern Palace hosted a 3-day open banquet, and all the commoners in the capital were invited to attend the celebration. KGU had been waiting at the Li residence for 3 days, hoping for another chance to talk to me, which infuriated Vera Liu, consumed by jealousy and resentment. She personally came to the Li estate just as KGU was leaving. Not only did she fail to bring him back, but she was also scolded by KGU for lacking propriety and making a spectacle of themselves. As the two of them walked past me holding the red silk ball today, Vera Liu suddenly said, "You must drink several cups of the wedding wine later, Miss Li." I smiled, a smile that made Vera Liu's heart tremble with unease. The emperor sat high upon the dais as the couple bowed to heaven, earth, and their sovereign father. All that remained was the final bow between husband and wife to conclude the wedding ceremony, yet a commotion erupted outside the Eastern Palace. A woman who claimed to be the wet nurse of the Grand Princess cried out, "I am the Grand Princess's wet nurse. This marriage must not proceed, it must not. The Crown Princess is the daughter of the Grand Princess." With someone secretly cooperating, the people from the Eastern Palace failed to stop her. In full view of the crowd, this person rushed all the way to the wedding scene, shouting loudly, What? The Grand Princess? Wasn't the Grand Princess already dead? Where did this daughter come from? It seems there were indeed rumors back then that the Grand Princess was pregnant before marriage and later disappeared for a while. If this were true, wouldn't the Crown Prince and Crown Princess be within 3 generations of kinship? This marriage violates the rights and regulations. This is turning into a huge scandal. The emperor on the throne suddenly changed his expression. As if a surge of blood rushed to his throat, which he forcibly swallowed back, he roared. What kind of demonic woman dares to spout such nonsense? Seize her at once. The 2 teams of guards were about to step forward to seize the person. Emperor Qian dared not let the wet nurse continue speaking any further. KGU, dressed in the crown prince's ceremonial robes, stood dumbfounded, while Vera Liu collapsed to the ground. But since I had orchestrated today's grand spectacle, I couldn't possibly let it end so anticlimactically. 2 censors stepped forward from the crowd. Blocking the path of the imperial guards, Your Majesty, the Crown Prince's grand wedding is being watched by all the people of the realm. If there are doubts about the Crown Princess's identity, it will tarnish the imperial family's dignity, without a thorough investigation to uncover the truth. It will be difficult to justify to the people of the realm the true identity of the Crown Princess, whether this wedding should proceed, and whether the officials from the Ministry of Rights should be imprisoned. All these matters must be addressed with clarity. Emperor Qian's dragon-like eyes burned with fury, as if he wished to devour the 2 censors alive. Yet for the censors, speaking bluntly to the emperor and being executed for it was the surest path to immortalizing their names in history. If the emperor could kill them, it would actually be doing them a favor. Do you have any evidence that the Crown Princess is the daughter of the Grand Princess? The nursemaid produced a secret letter and a waist token. Of course there is. Back then, Her Highness the Grand Princess died in childbirth at the estate, before her death. She wrote a secret letter stamped with the Grand Princess's seal, stating that the young mistress had a plum blossom-shaped birthmark on her lower back. If she ever encountered difficulties in the future, she was to take the waist token and the secret letter to the palace for help. The 2 imperial censors examined the waist token and the secret letter, then called someone to verify them. Indeed, as the wet nurse had said, they were left by the Grand Princess. The 2 maidservants took Vera Liu for an inspection, and just as the wet nurse had claimed, there was a plum blossom birthmark on her lower back. Vera Liu was indeed the daughter of the Grand Princess. The evidence was irrefutable. The Emperor Qian, who had been holding on for so long, suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood and fainted. The accompanying guards scrambled to carry him out to seek the imperial physician. The Crown Prince's grand wedding turned into a joke. The elder brother married a cousin from his aunt's family who was still within the 3rd degree of mourning, and the cousin was already pregnant before the wedding. Such a massive scandal is enough to plunge KGU into eternal damnation. Many of our Wang's friends lamented with him. Thank goodness Nova called off the engagement with the Crown Prince, or she would have been dragged into this terrible misfortune as well. Grandfather gave me a deep look. During the birthday banquet at the Liu residence that day, when I asked him and His Majesty to delay finalizing the marriage arrangement with Prince Ning, he already knew I was hiding something from him, but he never expected I had been secretly orchestrating such a grand scheme. Throughout the entire incident, I never took direct action, yet events unfolded according to my will. Reaching this point, Grandfather faintly guessed my intentions. His expression silent as he led me back to the Li residence. After entering the house, Grandfather said, "Do what you must. Though I may be old, I still have the strength to accompany you in stirring up some trouble." News came from the palace that after Emperor Qian returned, he issued an edict confining the Crown Prince to the Eastern Palace before vomiting 2 mouthfuls of blood and fainting. The imperial physicians said it was due to rage overwhelming the heart, and he wouldn't wake for at least 10 days to half a month. That night, heavy rain poured down. The Crown Prince, who should have been confined to the Eastern Palace, knelt outside the Li residence, begging to see me. Chunhua came to report while I was practicing calligraphy in the study. The words I wrote read, "Pay someone back in their own coin, kneel for a full day and night first, then we'll talk." Chunhua asked what if the Crown Prince leaves. I blew on the still wet ink on the rice paper and took a sip of the floral tea from the table. Where would he go? Returning to the Eastern Palace is just waiting for death. Once His Majesty wakes up, can he even remain Crown Prince? Would Prince Ning's faction let him off? The next morning, the rain had stopped. After being drenched all night, KGU looked utterly disheveled. Passers-by in front of the Li residence, seeing him dressed in a python robe, immediately recognized who the kneeling man was. They also knew exactly what KGU was trying to do. First, he forced the granddaughter of the Grand Commandant to break off their engagement, only to discover that the crown princess he intended to marry was actually his aunt's daughter. Now that he had lost his power, he came crawling back to beg the Grand Commandant. His shift from arrogance to groveling, even to the point of licking sores and kissing up, showcased the depths of his petty and despicable behavior. KGU lowered his head, using his hair to shield his face, blocking out the gazes of passers-by. This kneeling lasted another day. It wasn't until late at night that Chunhua finally brought KGU in through the back door. Having endured a night of rain and a full day under the scorching sun, KGU looked utterly haggard, his body covered in dried mud stains. As soon as KGU saw me, he fell to his knees with a thud. "Nova, save me. It was all my fault before. I was bewitched by that woman and ended up doing so many things to hurt you." I look at KGU kneeling before me, feeling a sense of vindication in my heart, yet my face shows distress and reluctance. The evidence against Vera Liu is irrefutable, leaving no room for reversal. There were too many witnesses yesterday. It's impossible to suppress. Once His Majesty wakes, he will deal with this matter immediately. The Emperor will not allow someone with a tainted reputation to remain crown prince, and my grandfather won't permit me to interfere either. KGU is well aware of this, which is why he has knelt outside the Li residence for a full day and night, refusing to leave. He clutches the hem of my skirt. "Nova, think of something. I know you must have a way. You've always been resourceful, and this time you'll surely come up with something too. For the sake of our past bond, help me one more time. I promise, if you can save me, whatever you want, consort, empress, I can give you anything." KGU didn't look up and failed to see the coldness in my eyes. Soon, I'll settle the score with you, KGU. Now, with the support of the Grand Tutor, Prince Ning will surely not spare His Highness. As soon as His Majesty wakes, Prince Ning's faction will launch their final assault. Unless what? I lowered my voice. Unless His Majesty never wakes up. The words jolted me awake like a splash of cold water. KGU seemed to have grasped at a lifeline, murmuring to himself, "Right, I still have the 6 armies of the Eastern Palace. There's still a chance. The capital only has the Imperial Guards and the embroidered dragon guards from the camp outside the city. The tiger tally for the Imperial Guards is with Father Emperor, and now that he's unconscious, no one can mobilize them, as long as Nova stands by my side. Even if the Grand Commandant reacts, he won't disregard Nova. The 6,000 troops of the 6 armies of the Eastern Palace are the strongest force. The general guarding the western straight gate of the palace is one of my people. As long as I can control the palace, obtain the tiger tally for the Imperial Guards, and ensure Father Emperor doesn't wake up, the throne will be mine. The only variable is the Grand Commandant's embroidered dragon guards." KGU knelt before me, pleading, "Nova, I know you care for me in your heart. If you help me, I will make you my empress once I ascend the throne. If you refuse, I will die here today. Whether I die early or late makes no difference. It's just a matter of a few days." After a long silence, I slowly began to speak. "Tomorrow night, I'll get my grandfather drunk. The dragon-embedded guards won't make any unusual moves." KGU was overjoyed and hurried back to prepare. I looked at the handprints on my skirt with disgust. After changing into a fresh set of clothes, I instructed Chunhua to take the soiled ones away and burn them. On the 3rd night of Emperor Qian's coma, the well-prepared KGU led 6,000 fully armed soldiers through the Shiji Gate into the Imperial Palace, swiftly taking control of the Emperor's bedchamber. Without the Emperor's knowledge, he slit his throat with a single stroke of his sword. But tonight, the traitors in the palace were not limited to KGU alone. Prince Ning, Jiyu Hong, had long stationed spies to monitor the Li residence and the Eastern Palace. He understood that even if I managed to bring down the crown prince, it wouldn't secure the throne for him. The only way to turn the tables was to stake everything on a desperate gamble. The Imperial Guards also had moles planted by Prince Ning, bypassing the commander of the guards and bribing the general guarding the Nanji Gate. He directly led 10,000 imperial guards into the palace, waiting for KGU to act as the mantis stalking the cicada, only for him to swoop in as the oriole behind. No sooner had KGU killed Emperor Qian than Prince Ning arrived with his men. Surrounding KGU, the two factions clashed right in the imperial palace, their battle cries reaching the heavens, audible from miles away. Neither side held back. It was victory or death. In the end, Prince Ning emerged victorious through sheer numerical superiority, pressing his blade against KGU's neck. Just as KGU despaired, I marched into the palace with 50,000 dragon-emblazoned guards. Ha 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 ha. Nova is here. Jiyu Hong, surrender now. Did you really think an engagement would matter? In the end, Nova stands with me. Prince Ning gasped for breath, looked at the dense crowd behind me, let out a bitter laugh, and dropped the knife in his hand. He then sat down against a pillar in front of the imperial palace. Ha 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 ha. How pitiful, my dear crown prince. Even at death's door, you're still daydreaming. Both you and I are now like fish on a chopping board, at the mercy of others. Impossible. Nova is here to help me. I will soon ascend the throne, and when that time comes, I won't spare a single one of your people. KGU looked at me with a frenzied expression, his face full of hope, but when he met my icy gaze, his smile gradually stiffened. Nova, it's me, it's KGU. Don't you recognize me? I let out a cold laugh. Imperial Dragon Guards, hear my command. The traitors KGU and Jiyu Hong have conspired against His Majesty, a crime punishable by death. Seize them. After finishing the task, I went to the Eastern Palace. Vera Liu was still wearing that crown princess ceremonial dress, her appearance disheveled. The moment she saw me, she lunged at me, only to be pinned to the ground by the guards I brought. It's you, it's all because of you, Nova G, you wretched woman. Ha 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 ha, even if you win, so what? In the history books, it will only record that I, Vera Liu, was the crown prince's consort, not you, Nova G. A pitiful woman who still hasn't grasped the situation. Xiangjie stepped behind me and respectfully called out Miss. While Chunhua praised her for doing an excellent job, Vera Liu stared blankly at Xiangjie, who was laughing and joking with Chunhua, and it took her a long time to react. You wretched traitor. How dare you betray me? Let me go. I am the daughter of the Grand Princess, a noblewoman. You filthy dogs, I'll kill you all. I plucked the 9-tree flower from her hair and toyed with it in my hand. Vera Liu, oh Vera Liu, do you know who your real father is? It's Emperor Qian. You are the product of his incest with the Grand Princess. Before the coronation ceremony, you still had a way out. To hide far away, marry some country bumpkin, and live out your life in obscurity. But you were too greedy. I even sent you a secret letter urging you to leave the Crown Prince's residence, yet you refused to listen. Vera Liu's eyes were wide with fury as she struggled violently. It's you, so it was you, Nova G, how cruel you are. I ordered Vera Liu to be imprisoned in the Imperial Clan Court. This scandal of the Jiyu royal family still had other uses. In the dungeon, KGU, clad in prisoner's garb, roared repeatedly, demanding to see me. KGU climbed to the front of the cell as soon as he saw me. Nova, Nova, are you here to save me? I know yesterday was too crowded. And you couldn't just let me go directly, right? You still care about me, don't you? The Prince of Ning in the adjacent cell burst into laughter. Crown Prince, are you still dreaming? You ended up in this state entirely because of this woman. Pitiful that you still expect her to save you. Ha ha ha. You still don't know, do you? Vera Liu was placed by your side on my orders, a pawn to deal with you. Nova G knew all along but kept silent, threatening me to cooperate with her in breaking off your engagement. Even the wet nurse of the eldest princess who caused trouble at your wedding was arranged by her. Even the palace coup between you and me was part of Nova G's scheme. Now, it seems the great Qian dynasty is about to change its surname to Li. Impossible. KGU collapsed to the ground. Impossible. Nova has been devoted to me since childhood. Chunhua told me that after breaking off the engagement, Nova cried herself to sleep every night at home. Nova, tell me, everything he said is a lie, isn't it? I looked down at the nearly deranged KGU and said with a smile, of course it's true. I've always known Vera Liu's identity. The incense butterfly in the Eastern Palace was my informant. I knew Vera Liu was pregnant the moment she conceived. The wet nurse of the eldest princess was also released by my order. As for Chunhua, She was a maid from my household. How could she possibly reveal the truth to you for a mere handful of gold? Kgu angrily confronted me. Why did you scheme against me like this? If you helped me ascend to the position of crown prince, why then plot against me? Why scheme against you? A cold smile curled at the corner of my lips. Wasn't it you who started the scheming first, at the age of 7? You sent people to abduct me, killed my mother, and still expected my Lee family to be grateful to you. Kgu, this is all the debt you owe me. Kgu's face drastically changed, his vigor instantly drained as he collapsed to the ground, muttering to himself, You knew, so you knew, ha ha ha. So you knew after all. I straightened my sleeves and walked toward the exit of the prison. Don't worry, Kgu, I won't let you die so easily. What you owe me will be repaid slowly. After the palace coup, Emperor Qian, the crown prince, and Prince Ning either died or were deposed, I retrieved the tiger tally of the imperial guards from the palace and took control of the guards, then selected a young prince to be enthroned as the new emperor. I petitioned for grandfather to be enfeoffed as the Duke of Zhan, granting him the privileges of wearing shoes and carrying a sword in the imperial court, not having to hasten his steps when entering, not being announced by name during ceremonies, and receiving the 9 bestowments. A year later, Vera Liu's identity was exposed, tarnishing the reputation of the Gu imperial family. The young emperor abdicated in favor of grandfather, and my father returned from the frontier to become the crown prince. I heard that on the day Aweng ascended the throne, Kgu went mad, so I ordered him to be chained up at the vegetable market in the eastern district, from the highest point of the palace. I could see him clearly. He managed to survive by scavenging rotten vegetable leaves and lasted 4 or 5 years before he died. All consequences arise from greed. Sometimes I wonder, if Kgu hadn't caused such a scene back then, perhaps he could have lived out his life in peace.